Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Abdul Naim and I am really excited about this 12th episode of Unpacking IVCO 2023 blog post. Today, we are going to have a special chat to discuss the IVCO 2023 blog post topics and make it accessible for everyone, especially those who don't have time to read it all. We get you. So our special guest today is Mr. Rahim Hassan Ali, who wrote The Significance of the Global Volunteering Standard for a New Generation of Volunteers. And we are going to break it down in this interview. Let us begin. Okay, Mr. Rahim, do you mind introducing yourself and say hello to the audience?
Excellent, thank you, and thank you for having me. My name is Rahim Hassan Ali. So I work for VSO, and I'm a global leadership manager there. And I'm also the coordinator for the Forum Standards Working Group, so in charge of all of the leadership work around the Global Volunteering Standard, which you might have heard of. And if you haven't, we'll be telling you a little bit more about that today.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction. So, Mr. Rahim, for those who haven't read the blog post, how does the Global Volunteering Standard support organization, or can you please brief us a little bit, introduce us a little bit about the Global Volunteering Standard itself, please?
Yes, of course I can. So the Global Volunteering Standard is a free resource, and it is a result of a 2-year consultation with over 700 practitioners and stakeholders from across the volunteering development sector. And what it does is it brings good practice together from across the world. And we've worked with all these practitioners from over 80 countries to get to this point. And what it looks like now, it covers 4 significant areas, which is the whole volunteering for development program cycle. So how we design and deliver our projects, how we sort of are responsible and commit to a good level of duty of care, how we manage volunteers, and how we measure impact. So that's the Global Volunteering Standard in a nutshell. The aim of it is really to help us to be more impactful and responsible in our practices, so we can do more in the great work that we all do in the volunteering for development sector.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rahim. So how does exactly the Global Volunteering Standard supports organization in creating a responsible and impactful volunteer program?
Yes, so the Global Volunteering Standard is a guide. So it has the 4 themes which I mentioned, and also a number of key actions. And what they are is a guide on how, what good practice looks like in these areas. Each of these themes, for instance, designing and delivering projects, it takes you through that whole sort of process on how you design projects, how you deliver projects, and how you might exit projects. And each of the other sort of main themes, like duty of care, managing volunteers, and measuring impact, goes through the same sort of structure. So it really unpacks what that means and what practices would be considered as good practice. Not only does it give you the guide, we've also developed a specific indicators. So not only you should be doing A, B, and C, but a bit what will that look like on the ground in terms of your systems, your processes, and your people. We've developed an online platform and self-assessment tool as well, so organizations can use. And what we really want organizations to do is reflect on their practice and look at what they're doing well and what they could improve, and make those decisions based on what their needs are, to be able to continuously be learning and improving, so we can do better as a sort of sector.
So you were saying the Global Volunteering Standard is like a handbook for volunteer organization or movement in a way. Yes.
Absolutely, it's like a handbook or a guide.
And the platform that you mentioned just now is like an online virtual examination, or in a way, questions that people can check whether or not, the checklist for people to see.
That's it. So we put it all online. So the platform is an interesting online sort of new tool that we've introduced a few years ago, and it hosts the global standard. This is where you can download the global standard in all of the UN languages. This is where you have a online self-assessment tool where you can do a self-assessment of your organization and look at your practices. It also has a library of good practices that has been shared, or good practice resources that have been shared by organizations across the sector. So there's about 100 resources there. We've also just about to launch some handbooks which tell you exactly, if you're looking at a section of the Global Volunteering Standard, here's what sort of good looks like. Here's a step-by-step guide on how you can sort of improve your practice. And then it also has an events page as well, so where we host free Global Volunteering Standard workshops for organizations that want to find out more and actually learn how to use the platform and different tools to benefit their work.
Oh, is the training for free?
Yes, so we're going to be hosting that twice a year, and the next one actually is coming up
Twice
in
a
November.
year. Oh,
Yeah.
so as of now, how many people have you managed to train or in a way run through the courses?
So in the last training was pilot, so we had approximately 30 organizations, but since then there's been lots of regional and national training. So I've probably lost count. It's in the hundreds now of
Oh,
organizations that have
interesting.
been trained. So we do have limited spaces, and they get filled up really quick. And at IVCO actually we're going to be launching our new set of workshops, which is taking place in November. So people at IVCO will actually get a priority to sign up.
Oh, that's great to know.
Mm.
And developing something like the global volunteering standard must have taken quite the effort. Do you mind sharing the behind the scene processes, or what did you do in way to come up with this global volunteering standard as of now?
Yeah. So we started off by sort of planning that we wanting a standard of good practice and some design principles. And some of the design principles that we agreed before we even started work on the global volunteering standard were we wanted it to be relevant to all different types of volunteering involving organizations. We wanted it to be relevant to all types of volunteering modalities. We wanted it to build on national sort of standards, policies, and other standards that already exist. And we wanted it to be a free tool for learning and improvement. So, this is what we established first. And then the other thing is we really were aware that we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. There's so many good practices that exist across the sector. So what we did is we firstly did some mapping, and we mapped over 100 different standards that already exist that the sectors or people from the sector is already using. So there's loads of stuff we found that were existing at national level and regional level, but nothing globally that could come together. So we mapped these 100 standards. We also went out and spoke and surveyed around about 700 practitioners from across the sector. And then we also ran 11 global workshops to really, really unpack what organizations wanted the structure and the content of the standard to be. So that was a huge consultation. We spent a year doing that. We reached over 80 countries. And then the next step was really getting specialist working groups together. So 42 organizations were involved in that process, where we sat around sort of tables virtually, and we started to develop the content of the standard. The standard was actually launched. So this was a year process before 2019. And IVCO 2019 is the date and the conference where we launched the standard, and that was held in Kigali, Rwanda.
Interesting facts. So you've
Yeah.
taken quite the tall order in order to fulfill that shoes, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that the process is so important because it wasn't just about, I think the main thing for me was it's a standard that has been built and developed by the sector for the sector, that has been very collaborative in its nature. And I think that's what makes it a really powerful tool.
Okay, and the highlight of, in a way, the session that we are having today is how about the youth participation in developing the global volunteering standard? Were they being consulted in the process?
Yeah, so we actually looked at one of the major handbooks that we sort of, or the standards that we use as part of the process was the International Citizen Service quality assurance handbook, which was a standard based on the biggest UK youth international volunteering program that existed. So, like, within that consultation and mapping, we made sure youth voices or youth advocates were involved in the process, and also standards that appeal to youth. So, what we were, when we talk about some of the design principles, we really did want this to be applicable to all volunteering modalities, and all types of volunteers. And one of the main types of volunteers we really looked at was not just your professional volunteers, but your youth volunteers, whether they come out from university or whether they would be seen as unskilled or semi-skilled. So we really looked at the whole plethora of types of volunteers. Yeah, so youth were definitely included in that, and I think some of the parts of the standard that really jump out, which I know we're going to be discussing, you can really see that we really thought about youth first, and like as sort of the one of the very main volunteer sort of modalities and types that will be volunteering for development.
Thank you so much. So can you explain the significance of youth volunteering in the context of the global volunteering standard, and how do young volunteers contribute to the development efforts?
So I think the youth have the biggest potential in terms of learning around development challenges, and have actually the most innovative solutions. We've seen youth bring a huge amount of enthusiasm and passion to volunteering for development. And we've had to be very conscious that when we work with youth volunteers, not only are they our future, and not only will they make development sustainable, but we tap into a new and vast reservoir of talent and enthusiasm that really pushes our work forward. Also, we give an opportunity to a set of people, the new generation, an opportunity to learn about what we do, and actually give them opportunities to not only be at the forefront, but hopefully eventually be at leadership roles within the sector to really push the work that we do forward.
Okay. Thank you so much for the explanation. I think in what specific elements of support and training are emphasized in the global volunteering standard to ensure the well-being and development of volunteers? Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, so
about this?
in terms of that support, we believe not just youth, all volunteers should get a really high level of support, and support throughout the sort of, and training throughout the process. But the great thing is we based our managing volunteers sort of section of good practices based on youth volunteering programs. And really that is, it starts all the way at recruitment and selection, to making sure we're briefing, we're giving the right sort of information over, and we're actually presenting the realities and the realism of volunteering in development before we actually recruit volunteers. Selection as well, we need to make sure that we're matching appropriately, but we're also giving people the opportunity to really understand and actually have a higher chance of being selected. And then we move over to sort of pre-placement. Sometimes that can be hit and miss in terms of what we are able to do, what our capacities are, but what the global volunteering standard is saying, that the preparation, training and learning pre-placement and during placement is fundamental. If volunteers, young or not, are not properly sort of trained and supported before and during, sometimes we can have adverse effects. A volunteer could feel out of their depth. They could not know how to approach a situation. They might not have cultural sensitivity. So there's a whole heap of sort of challenges that can arise out of that. So we're very, very clear that preparation, training, and learning is very important. But then also the in-country continued training and support, and that's not just support physically with what they're sort of doing as a volunteer. It's also the emotional well-being support as well. We also touch on post placement as well. It's very important that we hold a thorough debriefing. We recognize the volunteers' efforts, and also we support them to be ongoingly engaged with volunteering activities or development work. So we're really looking at the end-to-end journey, and that end-to-end journey has always been more thorough and more established in youth programs than other volunteer programs. So it's nice to have really brought that into the global volunteering standard to say what can we learn from youth volunteer programs, and how can that be seen as best practice for all volunteers.
Yes, yes, that's nice of you to mention, because I think volunteer retention is one of the biggest challenges we have, especially in
Yeah,
youth-related volunteering activities. Because in a way, youth are very enthusiastic, but in a way, they also
mm,
lose interest quite quickly. In a way,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Um, so how does the standard promote collaboration with local communities, including youth, and why is this participatory approach important in volunteer program?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I think one of the main pillars of the global volunteering standard is putting communities at the heart of what we do. And what we mean by that is, we volunteers don't just, or organizations don't just get on the ground and try to solve an issue, a problem or issue, or sort of or meet a development need without actually really consulting the community, which includes the community's youth as well. So we've really sort of established that what good practice does look like is making sure that communities are, we're not just like understanding their needs, but communities are involved in the design and delivery of projects. They are involved in decision making, and they're also involved in how they measure the impact of our efforts as well. And that feedback helps us to better understand the community and bring that back into how we approach development issues in the places in which we work.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just a mere community service, it's a community engagement. You need to properly
Yeah.
engage the community. And I think one of the most important aspect when dealing with community is the acceptance of the community. I mean, we can do all sort of things and plan all sort of great things for them, but if the community refuses to, in a way, accept what we have planned, I think that
Mm.
would be, in a way, disastrous. So we can't have a project running for
Yeah,
that.
of course. Of course. Yeah, yeah. And it also gives the community ownership, which is something that's quite beautiful. So when we sort of have to, leave a community, they have enough ownership and enough sort of, I guess, experience within that they can take some of these efforts forward and
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
recognize further
yeah.
and
And they
why.
can also have some ownership of the
Mm.
output of the program that will
The
ensure the
outputs as
continuity
well.
of the project. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's a very
yeah,
important part
yeah,
of it.
yeah.
Okay, in what ways does youth volunteering contribute to capacity building and skill development among young people, and how does this prepare them to address global challenges, be it in going into the workforce whatsoever? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's multiple effects of young people being involved with volunteering. Now, as I said before, it's like bringing them into volunteering opportunities, especially for development needs, and giving them the proper support and training. They really understand the complex challenges that we face as a global society at the moment with development issues. They also get to really be at the forefront and see what the realities are. They get to put their time, energy, and mind to actually helping, on the ground and solving some of these complex challenges that we face. But they also learn how to be sort of leaders as well. And in that process, they're not only, really having a really good, a very well-rounded introduction to development and their role within development. It's also giving them motivation to be active global citizens, to really be involved in sort of understanding and dealing and addressing challenges, whether that be around the globe or even back in the local communities. Now, this process in itself, and that's, I guess, for any of us, it builds character, it builds skills, it builds experiences. So coming back and searching for jobs, searching for future opportunities, becomes there's a lot more to say at an interview, for example. So it gives you a lot more to go on. And I think what's wonderful as well is when you volunteer, and especially in a sector like ours, that sort of commitment to citizenship is very, very powerful. And we do notice a lot of young people that have volunteered abroad do go into social impact type of jobs. So whether that be in a corporate or whether that be in a university, they really want to sort of they have this bigger heart to give back. They have a lot more compassion with the world. And I think in a world in which we live right now, and you sometimes you switch on the news and it can be quite
Yeah.
deflating in terms of all of the conflicts that are going on, a more compassionate world is really, really important. And the youth are the future of that more compassionate world.
Interesting point of view, because I think it is very
Mm.
important for them to have that immersive and humbling experiences on the ground while
Yeah,
volunteering in order to create
yeah,
a more compassionate
mm,
future of generation.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, is there anything else you would like to add or emphasize on the youth volunteering when it comes to global volunteering standard, Mr. Rahim?
No, I guess I want to say like it really applies to all types of volunteers, but you know the type of how we've sort of laid it out, it really helps us to create a nurturing ecosystem for all volunteers, but especially gives youth volunteers a really, really good experience, which I think is fundamental. If we're going to create great young people that are passionate about development, young people that are going to lead the development of the types of things we do as organizations, and actually be addressing development challenges, we need to give them the best experience, the best support, the best training as possible if they volunteer for our organizations. And the global volunteering standard helps us to do this.
That's good to know. Mr. Rahim, I just want to have your opinion on this. What is the minimum hours of volunteering hours for young people, especially from universities? Should they
Mhm.
engage before graduating? What do you think? Do you have any opinion on that?
Uh,
Do they have a certain set of numbers for people to be engaged in volunteering activities of hours of volunteering activities of some sort?
Yeah, so the global standard doesn't advise on particular things like that. So we actually, that's a really interesting question to ask, because we haven't asked that to youth volunteers. But I would say as much time as one can give is really important. But we should really be checking. This is actually a really good, interesting piece for us. We're about to review the volunteering standard, and we're going to have more consultation. And this is an interesting question to ask young people themselves: is how many hours do they feel is appropriate and what they can manage. Now, from my point of view, the more the better. But
That's
if
great
that's
to know.
sustainable or not. Okay.
Because if you may know that certain organization in a way gamify the participation of people in their organization. For example, if you join for several number hours of volunteering activities, then you can proceed to the next tier in a way to arrange. Do you think that is a good idea to gamify the participation of volunteers?
Yeah, so actually, I've been reading about that, and it's a very interesting approach. Actually, gamification of any sort of
Yeah,
task
yeah,
or
yes,
is going to
yes.
make it a lot more fun and give you a lot more motivation to get better and do more. So I think one of the sessions we're doing at IVCO on day 3, I think it's workshop 5 or
Mm-hmm.
6, which is around how we're using technology in sort of our work to do more. One of the things we're probably going to be talking about is gamification. So that's going to be interesting to see what delegates say. But I'm a very big fan of the gamification, because I think if you can make something a little bit more fun, a little bit more competitive, you're more likely to engage in a different way, and it sort of gives you a little bit of more oomph behind the work you're doing.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So, in case all of you are missing out, we will be having IFCO 2023 from the 22nd to the 26th of October here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And you will be seeing also Mr. Rahim Hassan Ali if you were given the privilege to attend the conference too. So, thank you so much, Mr. Rahim. All right, that was all the time that we had today for the interview. What an insightful conversation we've had today. Thank you so much, Mr. Rahim, for your time. To our viewers and listeners, don't forget to explore the conference website at www.ifco2023.org to read the blog post and more. If you haven't registered yet, this is your time to grab this opportunity to be part of IFCO 2023 Kuala Lumpur. Stay tuned for the next episodes. Bye.